Hi, all. I don't have any ancestors in Sullivan, but I had an ancestor who lived in Gouldsboro for a while. He had moved to Castine, and when the British left, he had to leave Castine along with others, and then it got a little too hot in Gouldsboro, too. So he wasn't even there a year before he decamped to New Brunswick with the Penobscot Loyalists. I'm going to try sharing my screen. I hope this works, and Raina will tell me. Whoops, I'm not liking that. Let's try that. Is it showing, Raina?
Yes, it looks good.
Great. Okay, well, as she mentioned, I have a blog, and I call it Heirlooms Reunited. I started it a little over a decade ago, and I can't tell you how I started it. I must have read a blog, and someone said, well, there's this free platform that Google offers, and so we'll go there. Oh, that's nice. Well, maybe I just didn't wait long enough. So today, I took on a project for the bicentennial of doing the 1820 census of Eastport and some surrounding towns. And I kept going and going until there were 9 counties in Maine in 1820. And I got 7 of them done. And I was dreading Cumberland and York, as you could imagine. So I finally have taken it up again. And believe me, I'm doing Cumberland. And mine is interesting in that it's now part of another county. So Cumberland was bigger in 1820. But basically, this is a departure from my usual thing. Usually I'll have a photograph or a letter or an autograph album, which those are kind of my favorite. And from the 1800s, I try to stay away from anything in the 1900s if I can. And if I do, it's early because I don't want to invade anyone's privacy. So I have a lot of Maine things, as you can imagine, because a lot of my items were picked up at antique malls and things in Maine. A few, I had to go get a government car every 3 years. So I did go down the antique alley to Hooksett, New Hampshire, and managed to buy some things in New Hampshire, but that's the extent of my travels. Except, unfortunately, when the online scene came along, and I've certainly spent my bundle. But you can see that it goes back to 2008, but I didn't get really serious with the format until 2010. And these are some of the labels. You can have a blog yourself, and some of you may, so you already know about the things that are available. They make it pretty easy for you. And my blog has been stolen a few times, so I've got this thing on that's licensed under Creative Commons, but I'm sure that doesn't do anything. But what bothers me when it was stolen, they make it look like your own blog, but it's of course their own URL. And I don't mind that they stole my ideas, but how is the person going to find that Bible they might want to be reunited with? That's the main thing. So that is let's go into Hancock County. This Hancock County in 1820, Bar Harbor was Eden. It has a lot of the islands. Waldo was part of Hancock. You probably know Hancock was much larger in 1820. Blue Hill, Brooksville, Bucksport, Castine. We go down, we've got Sullivan. And the census in 1820 just named heads of households. So my job isn't as difficult as you might have thought. I just finished Portland, which had about 8,000 some odd people, but there were only about 2,000 households. So I'd been dreading it for 2 years, but it wasn't that bad. But here are the names: Abbott, Ames, Ash, Ashley, Ball, Barnett, Bean, Blaisdell, Bragdon, Buckley, Bunker, Kendall, Clark. You have to understand that the enumerator may not have spelled very well. The people that he enumerated may not have known how to spell their names, so it's very interesting. Crabtree, we'll run into that name later on. Dyer, the Bible that I have, the wife's maiden name was Dyer. Emery, Ford, Foss, French. Some of these names are probably familiar to you. And here are the Gordons, and it's Robert Gordon. This is his household. And he married Thirza Dyer from Franklin. And Hills and Hodgkins and Ingalls. And I don't know if you have ancestors in Sullivan, but these names are probably very familiar to you. Pomeroy, Sargent, Stanhope, Simpson, Smith, Sullivan, Waterman, Webster, and even a Bill Weld. What do you know? And I always add a map. I love maps, so this gives me a chance to indulge that. So I always throw a map in there. I didn't get any comments on this one. Now, why I kept going with this was I found so many errors in the indexing online. It was just awful. And I mean, half of them would be wrong. Just terrible. Ichabod, I thought they were OCR'd because Ichabod would either start with a J or an S, hardly ever an I. And how could someone make those mistakes? But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was here, next door, in Gouldsboro. Someone read Gouldsboro as Scarborough. So all of these people online in 1820 are indexed as living in Scarborough. It does say Hancock County, and not Cumberland County, thankfully, but still people might see Scarborough and turn, that's not my guy, There were other mistakes too that I found later on. Unfortunately, Warsaw and Moscow were next to each other on the sheets as you're going through. Warsaw is Pittsfield's name back in the day. And they look so similar. And so I wondered, how could Moscow have so many people in it, more people than Bingham? And that's why, because Pittsfield was erroneously indexed with it. So it's much better to look at the sheets yourself than to take the word of Family Search or Ancestry.com. Oh, let's go back here. The Bible. Bible of Robert Gordon and Thirza Dyer Gordon of Sullivan. And I don't know how much you can see on here. I can't even read this. I don't know what that says, sadly. The Bible was published in 1831. I think they started writing in 1834. This is a page that's ripped, and it just, what was written there? Oh, if only, it looks like it says 1832 or 18 1839. I think it's 1832, but whatever was written is ripped out. And here he purchased the Bible in June 1832. This was a huge thing for people. Bibles were very expensive, and people would save up to buy them, and sometimes they would have to sell the Bible. I have other Bibles that have one family started in them and another family finished because the first family had to sell that Bible apparently to buy food. So you can see that this Robert Gordon was born in 1804. He's doing some math down here. Starts with the page of births. And I've got some enlargements of this. So Robert was born June 4, 1804, and his wife was born in 1809, April 18th. And the children they had were Patience and Samuel. Miriam, spelled several different ways throughout the Bible. Josiah, John Paul Gordon, and he's important because he is the person who owned that Sullivan Bulletin. And I think he had a grocery store in town. There'll be an ad, lumber, maybe it was lumber. There's an ad anyway that we'll see later. And P.E. Gordon, don't know what his name was. Andrew, either Andrew I think it's Andrew I, but it could be Andrew J. Those are very hard to distinguish sometimes. And Erastus with an A, but later on when he died, he became Erastus. So Erastus H. And the next page has deaths. And Miriam was the first listed. And Erastus, there you can see Erastus with an E. And Andrew. Robert himself died in 1882, the father. And his wife died also in 1882. And they are buried in Sullivan. And there were two more children that I think there was a Marion Tyler and someone else, and I may have missed that. Maybe down below, Augustus. They ran out of room. So does anybody have any Gordon or Dyer ancestors? Can you hear me?
I don't know if anybody on here does, but there's plenty of Gordons around, and there's even a Gordon cemetery.
That's where, yes, okay. And for some reason, the marriages were at the end, and here they were married in 1826. And that's where I found that Thirza, I guess that's how you pronounce it, was from Franklin. Roni, how do you pronounce that? Thirza?
Thirza.
Yeah.
Let's see, there's a chat. Very.
There were a couple things in the Bible, little mementos. This paper scrap. Again, lots of figuring.
It looks
Oli-
like we do have some Gordon relatives showing up in the comments. Sylvia
Awesome.
Gordon Gray, she grew up in Sullivan, and her mother was Mary Gordon of Franklin.
Wonderful. Okay, well, let me go back to something else. I made a tree on Ancestry.com, and the only entry, there's lots of hints and things you can get on Ancestry. You see there's 11 hints, but I didn't use any of them. I only used what was in the Bible that they wrote themselves. And they're their children. Here's Thirza, and her name was spelled several different ways. It's different again on her gravestone. But this was their family. And PE, I'd love to know more about him, but I didn't want to use the hints. I just wanted to go with the Bible. But it's kind of nice. And I did know who Robert's parents were because they're listed in the deaths. So his father was Robert T. Gordon, who died in 1851, and his mother, who was only listed as Miriam Gordon, so I don't know her maiden name, and I didn't research it. But obviously she had a granddaughter named for her. She died in 1832. And I believe they're all in that Gordon cemetery. I don't know if there's a link to the find a grave site or on, let's see if oh, here we go. I did do it. No, he's in the Bayview Cemetery, believe it or not, in Franklin. Interesting. But here's his, I can't make that any larger, but there's his monument. And there are at least 2 of their children buried in Franklin with them. And this, I don't know if I don't even know where this is, but does the schooner Grampus mean anything to anybody? It's an 1867 document, and Robert Gordon was still alive then. And it mentions Captain Gordon of the schooner Grampus, and this is the account of Robert Gordon. And you can see, looks like he bought piles and things, maybe for a wharf, I'm guessing, maybe.
I'm not familiar with the name Grampus, but it'd be interesting to look into that.
Well, there's a modern sailboat. I say modern, like I had a photograph of it, I think maybe from the 1950s, of some sleek sailboat that was called the Grampus, and that was very well known. And so it's maybe that was named after this one. Okay. All right, now we're getting into the good stuff. So we're counting on you folks to flesh this out. This is the Sullivan Bulletin of Saturday, June 3rd, 1882. And up here, it has the name of John P. Gordon. This was his copy. He was then living in Franklin, and he dealt in all kinds of lumber and groceries and dry goods and everything usually kept in a country store for sale at the lowest market prices. Mm-hmm. And his mother, his parents were apparently living in Franklin in 1882 because they're both listed here. Robert died in May 17th, and here it's Thirza. died on May 24th. So it seems like there was something going around and they both caught it. They died fairly close to one another. It also mentions some other deaths, but they're kind of out of your area. And this was to show there's the main seal. The editor was John C. Winterbotham, and he appears in one of the ads. I can't remember if he's an attorney or something, but we'll find it. It was published every Saturday by the Bulletin Publishing Company of West Sullivan, $2 a year. Correspondence on mining topics solicited from all parts of the state.
What's your name, Pam? This is Gary.
Yeah.
We've been told that the mining companies, there were several mining companies that were very active then, that they were the ones that published this paper. We have several copies from 1881 and 82 that we were able to get digitized several years ago. They're fun. They're really a scream with some of the ads and the stories.
The stories, right. The first page,
great.
Basically stories. That wouldn't surprise me because mining was big in town.
Right. And a lot of the ads are for mining equipment and mining stuff.
Raina loved this one. I think she was looking for a job. A smart and energetic young man to act as canvasser and agent for this paper.
I don't know if I fit all of the qualifications. But sure.
Right. Well, you're energetic, and yeah. And here's the Dunbar Brothers. Have got a well-filled store and are doing a good business. We see their delivery wagon almost every day up to West Sullivan. They're industrious, steady-going, and obliging young men and deserve the success which they are evidently achieving. And here it was June, so the weather we predict is about to be more consistently good. It mentions the Waukeag house. More on that later. Oh, wait a minute. I saw something about trouting. Yep. And here is an ad up for the Dunbar Brothers new store. It's opposite the Waukeag. Is that how you say it? Waukeag house?
Yep.
Yeah. Harvey Dunbar and Emery Dunbar.
There was a third brother at one point. And that's it.
That's right. Well, this, was a thoughtful contribution by Raina to add a little texture to this.
Right.
So that's quite the establishment.
Well, they lived in on the side, but they sold everything. It was a grocery store, clothing store, coal, lumber, wood, hardware. Any store pretty much then of any size, that's what they had to do. And once we get into some of the bigger quarries that had their own company store, that was the same thing. They sold everything.
Wow. Look at all the chimneys.
Yeah. That's how you heated.
Yep.
That store burned, and two of the brothers built a new one just across the road where the current Dunbar store sits. Part of that is part of the original store that was built after the one on the north side of the road burned. And that only left the Dunbar family 2 years ago.
Wow. This is what I love when people bring up all of this. I don't know where the Keel Sloop Spy of Portland is owned by Miss Ellen Cram. She probably wasn't from Sullivan, but she must have sailed up that way. Maine is just entering upon one of the most important political campaigns since its admission to the Union in 1820. Its importance is in the fact that all the state and a large part of the county offices are at stake, besides 4 representatives to Congress and 1 senator. And here's something from the Calais Times about the fishing in Grand Lake stream. They actually found a deer swimming in the lake and rescued the deer, brought it home, but they eventually let it go. And a thunder shower, 2 days of heavy rain. Memorial Day at West Sullivan was passed about the same as any common day. Men at work in the mines, quarries, and shops. A friend asks us, what is the reason we don't hear something more about the Shoreline Railroad? All we can say is we are watching and waiting as anxiously as any who make these inquiries. Gary, what's the reason we don't hear something more about the Shoreline Railroad?
Not sure I know what they're talking about.
Maybe it didn't get built, probably.
Well, wait, okay, 1880.
1882, June 1882.
When did Hancock break off?
1826.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. The railroad came through eventually, but it's where the rail trail is now. It's basically kind of north of Route 1, and it went to Calais. But prior to that, Maine Central had a railroad that came into Hancock, never made it across the Taunton River to Sullivan, but it ended at a ferry landing in Hancock, down on Hancock Point.
Maybe this is what
there were ferries that were owned by the railroad that went to all of the major towns. So you could ride the ferry to the railroad to Hancock, and then get a ferry to Bar Harbor, one to Sullivan, one to Gouldsboro, one to what's now Sorrento.
It's amazing how easy it was for people living along the coast to go places back then. This mentions the schooners William, Brave, Victor, Pearl, Alaska, and Georgetta. They just arrived, and the schooners A.B. Crabtree, May Queen, William, and Georgietta have sailed. On Thursday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, Alice M., wife of Gifford S. Merchant, departed this life in her 17th year. She leaves a babe 3 weeks old that will never know a mother's fond and affectionate care. Dr. S.M. Inman, the dentist, will be at the Waukeag House, Sullivan, on the 6th of June and remain 5 days. He will be prepared to attend to all matters connected with his profession and will be happy to meet all who may require his services. I love this. They said yesterday was a fine day, coming as it did after one of the coldest rainstorms of the season. Croakers are out again in full blast. So I guess they weren't called peepers then, but croakers. I'm assuming he's referring to spring peepers. The steamer Little Buttercup now makes daily trips between Sullivan and Bar Harbor, touching at intermediate landings. She leaves Sullivan at 7 o'clock morning, except on Mondays when she leaves at 6. Sundays excepted, leaving Bar Harbor for Sullivan and intermediate landings at 5 o'clock the same day. And then talking about, the upcoming election for governor. Here is an ad for the Little Buttercup. She's a steamer, saying basically the same thing. But if you can see that, I mean, this might not be her. This might be a representative graphic, but maybe. And this is the steamer Mount Desert with Captain David Robinson. It leaves Rockland for North Haven. It does come up. Okay, South Girlsboro, Lemoyne, Hancock, and Sullivan. That's the same thing. So apparently that's just a representative graphic of a steamer. So we've got the Little Buttercup and the Mount Desert. And I don't know which steamer this is. Maybe somebody will know, and they maybe know where it is.
I do know that that one is at the Sullivan boat landing, I believe.
That's over on Hancock Point at the terminus of the railroad. I can't remember the name of it, but that big hotel is there in the background.
That's what, yeah, I wondered what that was.
Yeah, if I had a memory, I could tell you what it is.
I mean, think of all the people that could ride on that thing. It's huge.
Oh, is that
yeah.
the Bluff House?
The what?
Yes,
The Bluff House.
the Bluff House is absolutely right.
Okay, and what's this over here? They had a nice view.
I'm not sure. It's not there now. It might be just a private residence. Now, this one I know about.
And where would this be? Is this Sullivan?
Okay, you can't see my pointer. Yes. The big building at the right is the Waukeg House.
Okay. I can't make it go any bigger, but
No, but to the left, along the top, is Dunbar's store.
oh,
Okay.
okay.
Then this ticket booth, can you make it, show me more to the left? I can't remember what's on the left. That's the end of it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in this field, and I can't remember if it's, I think it's to the left. Yes, I know it is. The Dunbars built a big captain's type house that was in the Dunbar family. The last owners, one of the last owners to run the Dunbar store, then he sold it to his nephew, who ran it up until several years ago.
Amazing.
And the family built several cabins around that house that set up on the shore. The little boathouse next to the carriage is still there. The wharf was out about to the man's head there, you can see behind the rail, was built out with granite piers like a lot of the other wharfs. The ticket booth, they moved up over that little hill where the spruce tree is and added onto it and made it one of the cabins. And all that's there, and it's now owned by Emery and Lydia Dunbar's daughter, Betsy Wakefield, and her husband, Roger.
So this building still exists?
Yep, it's part of a cottage. When my wife,
that would be fun to stay in.
we did for 19 years. Jeannie and I first came down here on vacation 1 week a year back starting in 1980. And that was the cottage we rented every year.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love that picture.
Is that a chimney I see that goes with it?
Probably, but
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Now zoom in a little more. The house to the left of the spruce tree, I believe, is still there. And then to the left of the chimney on the ticket booth is a house that it was called the Manor House. And there were two buildings way up on the top of the hill, the Manor House and the other one, the Swiss Chalet, which was like the bar and restaurant that went with the Manor House.
Mm.
They were recently torn down. They just got set vacant for 50 years. Wait a minute. Maybe not. I take that back. What I was just describing was another hotel right there on Route 1. And it was torn down in the 20s for its lumber. What is it? The Bristol Hotel.
Well, maybe we're going to see an ad for that. I know there were. Captain Oscar Crabtree, late master of schooner A.B. Crabtree, has arrived in the Hattie A. White from Boston. He's about to enter the coasting business from this place, and we wish him and all our young captains success in their voyages along our coast.
I wish Alan was with us. Alan Gray's member of the Hancock Society, and sometimes he gets on these. He lives on some of the Crabtree land that came down through his father. Crabtree's owned a big piece of Hancock, and the land where Alan lives is where the Crabtrees had a wharf and a boathouse and a boatyard. They built schooners there, then sailed them.
I knew Crabtree was a big name.
Yeah.
There's still a few around.
And here's W.O. Emery, who had apparently gone to Eastern State Normal School from Sullivan. 29 in the class. Maybe he stayed and taught.
That
Well,
would be William, I
what's
believe.
that? William Emery?
Yeah, I think so. He came up in a query we had from his. Yeah. His family and the Simpson family owned a lot of property around Sullivan Harbor.
I
And
remember those two names were both in the 1820 census.
Yep.
Yep.
These
Yeah.
were some patents issued in 1882, but none of them from Sullivan.
Oh.
George W. Pettingill has just received a large addition to his stock of goods and invites his customers to give him a call. He has a choice selection of crockery ware, a full line of groceries, and a choice selection of goods in the dress line, children's hosiery, ladies' hose, and Japanese and other styles of parasols. I think there's, yeah, here's his ad. He was in West Sullivan. Let's see what else he has. Boots, shoes, rubber goods, hats, and caps. Like you said, basically people had to have everything.
Yeah.
Memorial Day in Cherryfield. The summer days are coming. The fields have put on a mantle of green and are beginning to wave beautiful in the glowing sunlight. The trees are putting forth their buds and leaves. The ladies have begun gardening in good earnest. And they'll go about with watering pot in hand, saying how hot it is. Everything will be scorched up, wither and die. Human nature is ever the same, complaining, hardly ever satisfied for any length of time. Marriages in Amherst, Harrington, Eden, and Steuben. I guess Steuben is the closest to you. Thomas W. Stevens and Eva M. Faulkner, both of Steuben. The Waukeg House, William R. Keene, manager, and William O. Holmes, clerk. This new hotel lies at the head of Frenchman's Bay, Sullivan, Maine, a beautiful sheet of water emptying into the Atlantic Ocean. The Waukeg House contains 60 rooms, running water, and every convenience. Spacious piazzas, 650 feet, extend around the hotel, from which marine views of bay, islands, and ocean can be had. Also a panoramic view of Mount Desert in the distance. In all its picturesqueness and beauty, the views are not surpassed in this section. The house has been thoroughly renovated and the entire grounds under-drained. Rowing, fishing, yachting, driving, hunting, and bathing can here be enjoyed. The table will be unexcelled by any in the state. It will be the constant endeavor of the manager to make his guests comfortable in every respect, and no pains will be spared to make this the most attractive summer hotel on the coast of Maine. The Boston and Bangor steamers leave Lincoln's Wharf, Boston, on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 5:00 p.m., connecting at Rockland with the new steamer Mount Desert for Sullivan. Passengers by rail to Bangor connect by stage at Bangor for Sullivan. For information after May 20th, contact William R. Green in Sullivan. That was quite the place.
It was.
Or shot law.
Yeah. The boat wharf of the Waukeag House has been put in thorough repair. The lawn tennis ground and all other needed matters have been attended to. Manager Keene informs us that he's receiving letters from new and old visitors who propose to patronize his house the coming season. The outlook for business at the Waukeag for the season upon which they are about to enter looks more promising than ever before. And there you can see the 650 feet. Wow.
If you could blow that.
I
up a
can't.
little.
Oh, there we go.
See, they're all wearing sashes. There was some kind of a convention of, I don't know, GAR or
That would be neat.
one of the, or Masons, or, because we have that photo.
Well, this is your photo.
Oh, okay.
That's why. Here's the Thorndike Hotel. Oh, that's in Rockland. Never mind.
Yeah.
Wanted good miners at the Milton Mining Company.
Yeah.
Here's the Sullivan and Hancock Steam Ferry. It's the boat transit under the management of engineer Charles H. Allen, and it runs the route across the river between West Sullivan and Hancock.
Huh.
Let's see. Eastern Maine Railway, Bangor and Bucksport. And it has connections, stage connections, daily for Castine, Penobscot, Blue Hill, Ellsworth, Sullivan, and Mount Desert. L.L. Lincoln, superintendent. And see, we have Dunbar Brothers, Charles C. Burrell. Oh, well, here's this giant powder, dynamite. Something to do with the mines. And here's an ad for Milton Mining Company, and their main office is in Boston. And it mentions that probably capital stock was $1 million. And this is your photo. Do you think that's the Milton one?
That is not the Milton one, but those are several mines along the Taunton River. So there are various mines in between Sullivan Harbor and North Sullivan, all along the shore, in many different companies.
Okay. Here's Memorial Day in Eastport. The new steamer City of Richmond, 940 tons. The Comet is very small and the opportunities during the week so few that we have not been able to make any observation of the new, I guess that's Comet. And then again, comets are getting so numerous that but very little interest is excited about them. So numerous. There seems to be a great deal more of them than in the days when we were young. It is said that this one will not be of much account compared with the one that visited us last year, either in size or brilliancy. God, I'd love to see a comet. And here's this John C. Winterbotham, trial justice. He's the editor of this bulletin. And here's Gilbert E. Simpson. You mentioned Simpson, so obviously that was a mover and shaker surname. He's the deputy collector of customs in Sullivan. And here's L.W. Hodgkins, a physician and surgeon in Ellsworth, but I thought this was interesting. Here's W. Frank Stewart, who's a practical geologist and mining engineer, and he sounds as though he was an independent contractor. The Sullivan House, John U. Hill, proprietor, and the Relay House, W.T. Havey. The Relay House was in Franklin, and I assume that means it was on a stage line. Blaisdell Brothers, Crabtree and Haven Contractors in West Sullivan, Rough and Hammered Granite.
Yeah.
That's Havey, Crabtree and Havey. They had mines. Well, they didn't have a mine. They had quarries and a company store that went with it. These guys, these businessmen, they spread out into everything. They'd own part of a boat. So nobody owned it by themselves, because if it went down, they took the loss all themselves. So if they several owners, they spread the danger around.
Here's Cyrus Emery, and I believe this, it's all blurred, but I'm pretty sure that says Sullivan. And he was an insurance agent. He's an agent for the Boston Marine, speaking of the devil, Boston Marine Insurance Company. And he would insure cargoes of lumber, wood, granite, etc. And I don't know, I threw this in because even though it's North Castine, but it's something about delinquent stock in a mining company. And all the stockholders. Here's an architect in Castine, and the Bulletin also did job printing for people, cards, bills, statements, letterheads, envelopes, tags, and all. And right in town. Here's the Salem Sullivan Silver Mining Company, the Sullivan Lode in Sullivan, Maine. So Salem investors, but also John P. Gordon. There we go again. He was the son. It's his this copy of his paper, and the son of the Robert and Tirzah in the Bible, and Charles W. Connors of Sullivan. Here's Dyers Livery and Boarding Stable in West Sullivan. Charles H. Dyer, proprietor.
I'm pretty sure that's the one that set right where the bridge comes across now. And there used to be a ferry that came across there.
Yeah.
And
there was an ad for the ferry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dyer was the maiden name of Tirzah Gordon. Here's Simpson and Abbott, another store, but it seems more like a hardware kind of thing in West Sullivan. And a blacksmith shop, Cleves and Dyer's new stable in West Sullivan. And Horseshoeing by C.A. Watts. That appears to be it on the paper. I know we're getting late. I don't know if we have time to do this. We can do this other thing very quickly. I don't really know exactly what it is, so maybe you folks will have a better idea.
Oh.
It's a little booklet on PTA PA matters. I don't know if it was Press Association. It's not school. But the Amateur Press, published in West Sullivan. This is volume 1, number 1, in 1905. And here's a poem by P.J. Campbell. If I go farther in, I know that something clicked with Raina. But to the members of the Pine Tree Amateur Press Association.
It could be garish. He was a printer.
But here's the fellow. This represents on paper R.F. Garish, better known as Garish the printer among the natives.
Yep.
And he was a Sullivan person, apparently. Right, Raina?
Yes, he
Yeah.
had a shop in West Sullivan.
Yeah, he had a print shop.
Yeah. So I really don't know maybe he was just showing what he could do, what he could print for you. But it's just a little,
I wish we had that.
Hmm.
and that, I mean, if we went to my blog, there's a search box. And if you put Sullivan, Maine in there, which I did as a test, there's a lot that comes up that I have done. For instance, a photo of Dennis Hanna of East Sullivan, an autograph album of Almeda Cook of West Sullivan, Media, she called herself, of West Sullivan, and, you know, a doctor of Sullivan, a bunch of things. So if you did go to my blog and put Sullivan, Maine or something in there, there are many more things that would show up.
Amelia Springer.
Yeah.
Let me stop share.